The second book that I finished was The Throne of Fire by this part of the Kane Chronicles. It is the second book by Rick Riordan. Yes, I still read middle books and they're fantastic. They're great. This is also a very big book. It's 452 pages. And again, if you haven't read the series, I'm sorry to spoil it for you because, oh, I didn't actually say what the Clockwork Princess is about. Basically, there is this villain that wants to just destroy the world. He wants to take over the world with fucking robots. They're not robots, they're mechanicals. But it's just like robots in Victorian era. And he's trying to defeat the Shadowhunters by breaking into the Institute because monsters cannot enter the Institute, but robots that have no soul, they can. And so Tessa, which is the main character, she came from America to England to look for her brother, which turned out to be, I don't know if it was actually discovered on this book or if it was discovered before, so I'm not gonna say what it is, but she's looking for her brother. And she finds out some things about herself, like she might be related to other people, she might not be completely human. The villain might actually know her parents, and her parents might actually have been shadow hunters. Like there's a whole thing, and then she is falling in love with two guys that are friends, and she seems to be just like messing that whole relationship and dynamic. And so that's basically it. They're trying to defeat. It's not Mortimer. Is it Mortimer? Mortimer. No, I think that's from the freaking Sims franchise. But they're trying to defeat the man, the villain, and they're trying to find her brother. And it's just so many things. Also, for some reason, the Shadowhunters Council wants to take the Institute away from the current boss. And so they're dealing with that as well. And just a lot of stuff happening, which the focus is not on it. The focus is actually on whether the characters get along. But The Throne of Fire by Rick Riordan, again, is the second book. I don't remember when I read the first book. It's probably last year. It's definitely last year because it's not here. And so if I'm reading the second book, I definitely read the first one. But I started reading the book on the 2nd of January, 2025, and I finished it the 21st of March of 2025. It didn't actually take me that long. It took me like, what, 3 months? That's a good record, to be honest. I gave it 4.5, which is also a very good rating. And I enjoyed this book. Like, I really liked it. Funnily enough, I tried to read this book after I finished reading Percy Jackson's series, and I couldn't get into it. It's quite different from the Percy Jackson series. And I think I kept comparing them too much in my head to where I felt this book was not as interesting and as addictive. I was very interested because it's Egyptian mythology, and I don't know shit about Egyptian mythology, and I found that even more confusing than Greek and Roman mythology because everybody seems to be related, but at the same time, just everybody's sons and daughters, and they're like, is weirder than Roman and Greek mythology, and I never understood it. So I was very excited to have it explained on a simpler form, but I just couldn't get past the first few pages because it wasn't Percy Jackson. And I guess I kept expecting it to be like Percy Jackson. And I think that's also the reason why I couldn't get into Magnus Chase, which is another of the series that Bill Riordan made about the Viking kings, like Viking gods. Also couldn't finish that book, which I'm also planning on reading that series eventually if I don't die before then. But yeah, this book, the first book, is about two brothers that come together because they're trying to save their father, and they're full-on brothers, but I think they've been living, like, one of them has been living with their grandparents, and the other one has been living with their father. For some reason, I don't remember exactly why they made that choice. Also, are they twins? I don't remember if they're twins, if one is older than the other. But they have to come together on one's birthday because their father seems to have disappeared because of the Egyptian gods. And now they have to battle the Egyptian gods, and now they are also demigods, which works different than on the Percy Jackson's world. And on the second, also they have to save the world from the evil god. But in the second book, the gods have been released, and Carter and Sadie, which those are the names of the kids, they're trying to build a house with other people that are also demigods. I don't even know if that's the name of them, but I'm just gonna keep calling them demigods. They're trying to build like a house similar to the Camp Half-Blood on Percy Jackson, a house where they can train demigods because they don't know they're demigods, and there's a evil snake that is trying to take over the world, but it has to be released. Like, it hasn't really broken out of his cage. So they're trying to prevent that from happening. And they just have very little time. And they revive a god in order to try to help defeat the snake. And then they have to search for a book that has like 3 different sections. And they have to tell a spell from it. And they don't even know what Ra is. And also one of the things that I'm actually going to point out is that I really enjoyed the narration style. It's as if they're talking, like if as if it's a recording of them talking, which okay, it's funny that they supposedly send that recording to Rick Riordan so he would write that book, which obviously is not a thing. Like, he just, I don't know. It just, I find it very funny, the self-inserting himself in the book. But it's actually very original, I guess. I love when books take a different approach of narration. Like, they're not, I love it when they're journals. I love it when it's this. There's another one that I think is like Classified Files, which I also have to read, but I don't remember the name of the book. But I'm interested in reading it because I find the writing style very interesting. But yeah, this book was fun. It was fun. The characters were not that annoying. Some parts were annoying, but they're kids, so you kind of just give them a little bit of more grace than if they were fucking adults. And I'm looking at you, freaking Zoe. I'm not gonna let this girl rest. They're not as annoying as I would have expected. And I don't know, like, I kind of got used to it. There was a little of a like a romance building up here, like multiple romances actually. There's one for the older boy, there's one for the youngest boy. They meet like another houses because they're like different houses. Also, I forgot to mention this. Apparently, in Egypt, there was like, I didn't know this because I don't know shit about Egyptian history, which I should because I have read some of the Bible. Which, if you didn't know, a lot of the time, a lot of parts of the Bible take place in Egypt. Like I forgot the name, but like the people of God were slaves in Egypt for a while. And actually, the guys that broke them out of Egypt were magicians. So it is explained in the books that there's actually this magician's house, which are kind of like, they're the demigods. They're the demigods. And they have like powers that are given to them by the gods. And they were called the magicians. And so they have multiple houses. I think the house in Brooklyn, which is the house that Carter and Sadie built, is like the 80 something house. There's like a house in each different country, probably states, like multiple houses in one country if it's big enough. And they run into the first house of the entire like thing. They go into the first house and they're trying to find a book, and they meet other people that are magicians, and this house has been active for a while. I don't know, for some reason. Oh yeah, it has to do with their father. The reason why the second house, like the house in Brooklyn, wasn't working and they had to rebuild it because their father just kind of like, also they have an uncle that's alive and is also a magician, and is helping them just rebuild the house and train the kids to help fight the kings and queens and the gods. They're not queens, but the kind of kings. Listen, sorry for the tangent, but I find it so interesting that, of course, in every ancient civilization, they believe the gods gave the kings and queens divine powers, and they were the reason why they should be kings because they were accepted by the god. But they believed that they were like incarnations of the god. They believed the god was talking to them through them, which I think is very confusing because if the magicians can be possessed by the gods, or no. Okay, the magicians cannot be possessed by the gods. I think they're just fighting with the gods because they have to control a balance because the gods can be greedy and they can, I don't know. Listen, there's just a lot. I'm just very confused now that I think about it because I don't remember shit about this book. So just forget a lot about it. The thing is, it was actually a very good book. It was very interesting. I guess it didn't make a lasting impact because I forgot all about it, but I do have that overall gist that they're trying to find a book and they're trying to defeat a king. And oh yeah, so the gods are too powerful, and some of the people can be possessed by the gods, And I don't remember if all magicians can be possessed by a god, but I know Carter and Sadie can be possessed by a god, and the gods can use them as a vessel to do things in the world, and they need a vessel in order to do things in the world. But they can also take over completely from the body, but the host has to give them control, which is a very dangerous thing because they can actually burn up and they can die. And they don't want to give controls to the gods because the gods have their own agenda. They're not as good as they're not good people. Okay, there's nuances and they're imperfect, and which is weird because they're meant to be gods. And I don't know, we always have this idea that gods are perfect because they're gods, but in this case, they're not. Oh, I'm running out of power. Just give me a sec. So the gods are not perfect in this story, and I think for some reason one of them is like also is their mother and also their partner, which the incest in the Egyptian lore is crazy. Like one is their father and also is themselves. Like crazy lore to the point that I'm so confused about it. But that's the gist. They're trying to prevent the evil snake from being released and destroying the world. That is it. I also read the third book of the series. I managed to finish the series this year, which yay, good for me. And I started reading the book the 23rd of March, and I finished the 27th of March, which didn't take me a long time. That's actually really good, I think. And I gave it 4 stars. It is the Serpent's Shadow, which in this one, I think the evil. Oh, that is why the internet was not working. Connected. It is the evil villain that's trying to destroy the world because it wants to swallow the world. Why, you might ask? I don't know. Villains are like that. And apparently, this is a thing that needs to be repeated time and time again. The evil snake is going to swallow the world, which also, can we talk about like the fact that the snake is the evil villain in the Egyptian lore and also the evil villain in the Christian lore, which we can debate on whether or not that's the true religion. People believed the Egyptian religion was true until it was, I don't know if it was proven that it wasn't, but it's like not that popular anymore. So I just find it very interesting. And also the sun is of course Ra, but in the Roman mythology, it is not the sun, it is actually the sky. And the sun is actually Apollo, which is the sun, which is the not the sun, but I guess it is a sun, S-O-N. I think it's been you might probably hear the same because my accent is horrendous. But Apollo is actually the son of Zeus, which is the sky, and he's also the sun, the literal sun. Which I find so interesting how a lot of things are similar, but they're different things. And, anyway, there's a theory that says that different tribes came together, and so that's part of the reason why the early accounts of the Bible were so confusing because it's different cultures being together. Anyway, I found that very interesting because I don't know, theology and religion and history, those are like my weak points. I love them so much. I ended up enjoying the book, but I think I rushed it. I loved how the romance was handled. There was a little bit of a love triangle, and it was handled very differently than from the Clockwork Princess book, but it worked amazingly, so I'm not bad about it. It didn't make a lasting impact on me, which is probably the reason why I cannot remember anything about it. One of the things that were a downside is that there was not a lot of imaginative scenery. We didn't get a lot of descriptions, which is kind of like briefly mentioned, and a lot of the times it was from Sadie's point of view. Carter's focus on different things, and he would give us a little more of a description around the setting and all of that. But Sadie was just more focused on the romance and the people and just what it was happening to them. She was a lot more emotional. Bast, which is one of the goddesses, was my favorite. But it makes sense because she's the cat goddess. Apparently, they have a cat goddess, which is freaking cute. Like, Egyptians loved cat, and they even made a god. I shouldn't call it that way because that's weird. They didn't make gods. But they have a god for cats. And I found that so cute. And Bess and Tourette were a lovely couple. It was a very fun book, and I'm glad to have read the series and see the differences between the Percy Jackson books and the King Chronicles books because I feel they're very different. Like one is a lot more dark than the other one. One is a lot more heavy than the other one. I feel like the Percy Jackson's book were very lighthearted, even though it has like a lot of dark themes and all of that. But compared to these ones, I feel these ones were more emotional. And there were a lot of different themes that were mentioned, which makes sense because the Percy Jackson was, inspired by Rick and his son, and Crane Chronicles was just a different story that he concocted. Obviously had a different inspiration. Then I read Sour Candy by Killian Patrick Burke. Ah, so much to say about that. This was a very short book. It was 107 pages. I've had this book since 2015. Why did I got it? No, I don't think it was 2015. I think it was like 2017. Yeah, it was from 2017 that I bought it. And this is a horror book. You might be wondering, why do you have a horror book? If you have seen my Fear Escape book, my Fear Escape video, you probably are not wondering that. But if you haven't, and you've seen my previous reads, you're probably wondering why I have a horror book. I may read this. And that is because I went through a phase of dark romance, and I really believe this was a dark romance. I don't know why I didn't realize it was a freaking horror book. But I used to previously just find my books through the similar uses like on Goodreads. Don't do that anymore, thank God. But that's how I used to find my books. And so I just would find very similar books, even though they were not on the same genre. And this one was a horror book. I gave it 375, and I actually finished this in 2 days. I started the 30th of March, and I finished it the 31st of March. And I feel now that the time has passed that I rated it too high. It's not that I hated the book, I didn't. It was a good read. I started reading it because for some reason it got recommended on my feed. Like there were a lot of people watching it, and it turns out it's because it was going viral on BookTok, which I'm not part of that community. I don't use TikTok, even though I made an account, and I'm probably gonna talk about that on the next video or something. I'm eventually gonna talk about that, but it's not my usual genre. Like I was engaged, but it was an unsatisfying ending, and the story doesn't feel all that fleshed out, to be honest. Premise was interesting, and I probably would recommend it to a non-reader, but I don't think I would read this book again, and I wouldn't pick it again. Yeah, this was not a book that I would. It was just not my taste. I don't know how to rate horror books, so that's why I gave it a 2 of a high rating, because 375 is a good rating for a book that was just not. It's not that it was bad, but the premise is basically a guy meets a boy on the supermarket, and now he has to take care of the boy. He doesn't know who his parents are, and he has to take care of the boy, and he seems to be dying. Like the boy seems to be killing him slowly, and he doesn't know what is going on. The boy is like a parasite, and the story is very short. So of course, there's not a lot of time to have a fleshed out story. But I didn't like the ending. It didn't make sense to me. It felt like it was rushed. It was unsatisfying. Didn't like it. And the story, while the premise was good, it felt more like an idea. It didn't feel like, a book. Just simply, it felt like a story you would tell somebody else, not something that you would read. And not maybe that's the fault of the story being too short. Like I didn't find it scary. To me, it was not a scary book. It was not terrifying or anything like that. I don't think it's horror, although it would probably be like a scary story that you would tell a child on Halloween. But if you're a more mature audience, I don't think you would be all that shocked about the story. And it wouldn't like really impact you. So to me, it wasn't a big of a deal. I don't get really the hype. There were a lot of people giving it 5 stars and saying like, oh, it was so terrifying. I wouldn't need sour candy again. Like I will never look at it again. And I just, okay. Like the book was just okay. Like this, yeah, that's just how I saw it.